Hello, my name is Ryan Wickham, and I am your host here at BTS with Ryan Wickham. This is my novel, Outlaw Principles. It has sold out over three times on Amazon, and we're marching quickly towards a fourth sellout. A very interesting, controversial read. It's definitely entertaining. I can promise you, like I've said before, you won't be bored reading it. Now, that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about a couple different things. The first thing is about near-death experiences. Now, we're also going to talk about. I'm going to give you some very critical information that will really help you mourn the loss of a loved one. Now, this is the one thing that really connects the entire world together. I mean, there's different races, different sexes, different sexual orientations, different religious beliefs, and whatnot, and so on and so forth. But the one thing that we all have in common in this world is that we have all either experienced a loss of a loved one or we at some point will, right? So very critical information I want to relay to you. But first, near-death experiences. Now, let me be very clear here. I'm not talking about you were driving down the highway in your vehicle, you hit some black ice, the vehicle spun out of control, and you almost hit a transport or a semi-truck or whatever you want to call it. I'm talking about an actual experience where your death was imminent. Now, I have firsthand experience with this, as all my viewers know and as all my fans know. Um, a near-death experience begins with an event that brings about death becoming imminent in your life. How ironic is that? So in this particular incident, for me, the near-death experience began when I woke to from this night terror that I had to blood projectiling back in my face. Now, that was the sign of an aortic bleed. An aortic bleed really lets you know that bad news, death is on its way for you, and within minutes, maybe even just, well, yeah, minutes, we'll say. So I struggle through the apartment. I've told this part of the story before. I get down to the hallway. I'm laying down. My insides are trying to come out. Gore City, you get the point, right? Now, at some point, this obscene pain and all of the struggle and the chaos of the situation started to slowly evaporate almost, I suppose you could say. It felt like I was slipping into this warm, comforting, soothing bath, and I wasn't even really aware of it so much as I was feeling it, almost like this very trippy, like drug-induced like experience. And all of a sudden, my hands, which were covered in blood and, as you can see, mangled, um, changed. They became these little baby hands, these little small little guy hands, and there was like the red brownish sort of cover or sorry, soaked in blood carpet transcended to what was now this green shade carpet, the same green shade carpet that I could find in my grandparents' basement. And in front of me were these two sets of feet. One set of feet belonged to my grandfather, and the other set of feet belonged to my grandmother. And it was the craziest thing. I was now this child back in this basement, and yet I was also this grown man. So I was aware of the fact that I was like these two things at once. I was where I went back to, and I was where I was in that moment. And I was aware of the fact that this wasn't my current body, that I was in fact an adult and not the child that I saw my sort of self as. And it felt nice. I loved my grandparents very much. Losing them was difficult, to say the least. And being there with them was very soothing, knowing that I wasn't alone. And I heard the gentle sound of my grandmother's beautiful voice telling me to go back. She called up my name. I could hear her saying, Ryan, Ryan, it's not your time. You've got to go back. There's people who are counting on you. You have important things to do. You have to go back. So I kind of looked up and I said, okay, Grandma. And I sort of blew a kiss to her, and I reached out to touch my grandfather's leg, and then I kind of came back, and I saw the medics and everything else that was going on, and it was bad. It was bad, and I was really struggling to stay alive because my grandmother told me, "Yeah, it's not time. We've got to go back." So I went back, but I'm losing more and more blood, and my vitals weren't good, and I was definitely slipping away. And by the time I got to the hospital, here we go again, and it wasn't really looking very good for me. And again, I slip away. And now the situation was really urgent. My grandmother had tried to take this sort of loving approach and to coax me back in to the living so that I could be there for my mother, my sister, my family, and everybody else who needed me. And now the situation was urgent. This was not the first time now I had slipped away. I was now in it again. And I appeared to be dead because there was no, I wasn't moving, I wasn't talking, I wasn't responding. And now my grandfather, he's gotten like the tough love approach with me now. He's like, come on, let's go. It's time to go. Come on, let's go. Get up. You've got to go. We love you, but this is not your time. And he was very strong, very stern with me. And you could tell it was only out of love. He was urgently pleading with me to come back. And throughout this process, and I obviously did come back, proof of that by the fact I'm standing here, or sitting here rather, talking to you right now. It was a warm experience. I mean, and I came back because I'm like, okay, I get this now. Orders came from somebody that I'm supposed to come back to the earth now. I'm not supposed to pass over. And so I'm like, okay, and I pushed through it. And I remember waking back up and thinking to myself, no, I'm going to find a way to do this. They've forced me out of the afterlife back here on earth. This is my responsibility. It's on the doctors, the physicians, the nurses, and myself, most of all, to find a way to fight through this. Now, it wasn't, I didn't see a white light. Okay, I think that maybe every near-death experience can be different. Some people report seeing white lights and walking to it. I think it's basically customized to some extent for each individual. But the one piece of information that I can give you, that if you are in a situation where you're mourning the loss of a loved one, and this is really, really important, is that if you weren't there with them when they passed away, as they were slipping away into death, they're not in pain. It's almost as if though you remove yourself. You're removed from the sufferings and entrapments of your own physical body. And you're reminded of all the love you have, from your family, from your friends. And you know that that's there. Even if maybe you had an argument with them, that was your last communication with them, they know. They know how much you love. They do. They are comforted by that fact. And I was aware of the fact that there were people in my life who I maybe didn't have the best last encounter with, but I knew about what they really thought about me. And I didn't take that last negative encounter that might have been there into consideration. I saw the overall picture of love. So please be soothed by the fact that even if you did not have the best last communication with your loved one who you lost, or you weren't there to say goodbye to them, or whatever the case might be, they know you would have wanted to have been there. There's not a doubt in their mind. I know that because I experienced it firsthand. So I can honestly tell you that. Here's something else which is really critical. This is particularly true for people who have lost a loved one to cancer, or they were at the hospital with them as they were passing away from an accident. I heard everything everybody said to me when I was out. And there was this one girl in particular who was not medical personnel. She just happened to be an employee of the hospital, I guess, and she was helping move my stretcher. She was helping race it into the operating room. And I heard her saying the nicest, most wonderful, soothing things to me. And it really made a real difference. And I could hear her encouraging me. And although you might be seeing your loved one passing away of cancer or whatever the case might be, or they're laying there and they appear to, there's no physical response, they're not communicating in any way, they appear to be completely out of it, they can hear you. And I can tell you they can hear you because I was in those shoes, slipping away. You can hear it. So keep saying those good things. Let them know you're there for them. Let them know how appreciative they are, how much you love them. It makes a difference. It soothes them. It helps them. It really, really does. So if you're in that position someday where you're with a loved one and you have that opportunity, talk to them. Say anything at all. Just let them hear your voice. It will make a difference. I can promise you that. It's very critical information, I think, because I think that one of the biggest things that prevents somebody from mourning successfully over the death of a loved one is that they don't feel that they had enough closure. Right? Like if they only had one more day to say one more thing, or one more chance to say this or do that, or let them know this, they know. They know. and you can rest assured and let your broken heart mourn. Know that they know, and that should make a real difference. I certainly hope. Um, so that kind of sums up my experience with near-death experiences, and what I can tell you from that can help you mourn a loss in your life. I think I certainly hope that you can take this advice, run with it, and use it and pass it on. Please share this episode with all of your family, friends, people at work. Let them know. You can't say that there's nobody in your life who's ever experienced death. So this is information that can help them, even if you haven't gone through this, and information that you can use for when you eventually will go through this. As morbid as that sounds, it's true. I want to announce there is as I mentioned this in the preview for this episode, there is a phone number. It's a support line for soldiers. It's the support hotline, I suppose you could say. Number is 1-855-373-8387. Again, that's 1-855-373-8387 for our Canadian troops hotline. Please, men and women who are suffering from PTSD, who have just returned home to Canada, or maybe have been back or haven't seen active duty for some time, but now are really struggling with these issues, please reach out and call this number to get the help you need to deal with it, so that you don't end up the next suicide statistic. Okay, heavy show, right? Coming up in following episodes, we've got Michael Walton he's the author of APOC. He's going to be joining us at the beginning of February. We got all sorts of interesting topics we've got up for discussion. I'll tell you about more of those in preview episodes. Please check me out on my blog site at well, that's a loaded comment. www.ryanwickham.konline.ca. That's www.ryanwickham.konline.ca. I want to thank our producer, Josh Wallen from J. Wallen Productions, my sponsor, Canadian Red Dragon, and my brilliant tech services from Keith Hooper at konline.ca. He does incredible work for very affordable prices. Check out my blog site, find out my full story, and get your copy of Outlaw Principles Today, a book I can promise you will never bore you, and is very controversial, thought-provoking, entertaining, and worth every penny you'll have spent on it. Again, my name is Ryan Wickham, and I'm your host here at Behind the Scenes with Ryan Wickham, and I will see you next time on BTS with Ryan Wickham.